to record. So I hope everybody doesn't mind that we're recording as well. So I think that's all the technology. We have an hour together, assuming we want to occupy all that space. And to go back to the story, so the session we just had about half an hour ago was on this concept of ecosocial reconstruction, which is a mouthful, but it's part of our thinking about the concepts we use around social construction, particularly as it relates to nature. And the personal imagination part is that I'm an MD PhD, trained at Hopkins and a few other name-dropping places, who later in his career became a tree doctor, an art performance character who asks people, what can we learn about health from trees and forests? So I presume you're here because you have some interest in nature and in trees. So I thought we could begin with an exercise that hopefully brings us into relationship with trees. I'll outline that and see if everybody's interested in taking that journey. Then I might spend a few more minutes just talking about some of the attributes of what it means to be a tree doctor, but then just open up the discussion, particularly around this idea of what's the abstract concept and what are the practices associated with being more ecologically conscious. And for those of you that want to become a tree doctor, I'll be happy to give you the 5 easy lessons. So let's do this. I think all of you, if I ask you all to think of a favorite tree, or to imagine what might be a favorite tree, how many would be willing to do that with us? Is everybody willing to imagine a favorite tree somewhere, or imagine a favorite tree? Okay, I can't see Isabel raising a hand, but I'm going to, well, from Brazil, my heavens. I think you can probably imagine a few trees in Brazil, if that's okay, Isabel. And Jeffrey is joining us. I'll just ask him to do the task. Now, we're going to then, therefore, take our... Hi, oh my, we've got some more people coming in. So welcome, Sylvia, welcome, Isabel, welcome, Jeffrey, welcome, Carol. We're about to take a journey, and everybody else who's been on board has raised their hands. So I think you're on our journey. So we'll start with a couple of breaths, and just to kind of relax. And if you want to close your eyes, it's probably easier because we're going to use our imaginations to visit that favorite tree of yours. We'll start in outer space. We'll go to visit your tree, and then we'll do some exercises in relationship to that tree. And I would guess this will take about 15 minutes. And to just give you all the confidence in the world, I've never done this exactly this way. So you're experimenting on this journey. Is that a little bit clearer what we're doing? We're doing a mental imagination journey to your favorite tree, I hope. Okay. I will start with the story that I had this epiphany. I realized that that's my backdrop. You can't quite see the oak tree there. That's where I'd sit and think and write and work under a 250-year-old oak tree. So that's where I'm going to end up. But, you know, I've been breathing the carbon dioxide emitted by that tree, and that tree has been breathing the oxygen that I've been breathing out. So I'm really intimately related to that tree because there are probably sugars in me and sugars in that tree that have molecules from each one of us. So again, it's in that spirit that I ask you to close your eyes, take a few breaths, and imagine yourself in the darkest outer space that your imagination can allow you to see or not see. But lo and behold, out of one corner of your imagination emerges a blue dot. Oh no, it's not. You're getting closer. It's a blue sphere. Oh, and it's not exactly blue all over the place. There are these white fluffy things, and there's some brown things, and oh, wait a minute. Of course I know what that is. That's the planet Earth. And I'm on a journey to my favorite tree. My favorite tree is waiting for me. And as I approach the planet Earth even closer and closer, I begin to see spaces of green. I begin to see boundaries. I begin to see tree lines, places where trees stop their growth on the planet. It could be a mountain. There's a tree line on a mountain. It could be a tree line in the boreal forests in Canada. If you really want to use your imagination, you can find the trees in the Antarctic. They're fossils and they're buried miles under the ice. But yes, there was a tree line even in our planet in the Antarctic. So this journey through space has prepared you to think of space and time in perhaps different ways. And all of you now are going to focus on where your favorite tree is. I've already said my favorite tree is an oak yard in my backyard in Shaker Heights, Ohio. Now, this is a tree hugging society, so I want you to get close to that tree. You can hug it, you can sit on its roots, you can do whatever you want. You can climb it if you want, some of you who are adventurers. But this is your favorite tree. This is a tree that you've shared memories with. You've shared oxygen, you've shared carbon dioxide, maybe you've shared water. This might be the tree you're going to be buried under. This is an intimate tree. Now, through the power of the human imagination, you are slowly going to drift into that tree. The bark has no resistance for human imagination. And you're inside the cambrium, you're inside the living part of the tree. And the question I'm going to ask you as you look around, up and down, is what are you learning about health from this journey, from this tree? Are you looking upwards to see branches? Oh, we take those metaphors all the time. Branches of knowledge, branches of life. Are you learning about branches? Are you learning about illumination through the leaves that seek out through phototropism any source of light that can help that tree grow? Or perhaps you're one who likes depth. So go down in this favorite tree of yours. Imagine what it must be like under the ground. You know, somebody wrote a book called The Hidden Life of Trees. Yeah, we've hidden a lot of things from you human beings. In fact, I, as the tree doctor, might say there's more to look under the ground than above. So be sure, if you've gone up the tree, come down and feel what's going on under the ground. You are in relationship with many more creatures down there than you are above the ground. Of course, you know about the mycelial rhizosomal networks. You know about soil. My Lord, how many living creatures are in soil? You learn about entanglement. You learn about cooperation. Well, you don't have to learn anything. I'm just telling you some of the things I've learned on my journeys. So the question for you as we come out and back into our Zoom space is, how was your visit and what did you learn? Sylvanus, the name for the Roman god, the tree doctor, makes his ambition to help human beings learn about health from forests and trees. So you're coming out now, you're in the tree. We need to kind of get together. If I come out of my tree, I go into a hammock or I go into a swing that I swing my grandchildren on, but no, don't have time for that. We got to get out into our space together. So please come out from your favorite tree and come back to some of my favorite people here in the Taos Institute session on ecosocial reconstruction and the personal journey into freedom. I guess we probably should take a couple of deep breaths to transition back. So let's do that. So, what did this flight of imagination tell you about your relationship to that tree and what you learned from the tree? Ilana. Ilana,
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. First of all, I have an intimate relationship with several trees, so I had a hard time choosing the one. But I settled on the one that I'm looking at right now, is right outside my front door. And I am so intimately connected to it that it's very hard for me to speak from its point of view versus my point of view. Because I planted that tree some 25 years ago. It's a water oak. It's enormous. It's taller than my 2-story house, so maybe 30 something feet. Huge branches, very healthy looking. And what's special about it for me is that it came in a 5-gallon coffee can that a friend of mine gave me. It showed up in her backyard and she said she couldn't grow it. So am I interested? And I said, yes. And I remember when I planted it, my husband, who was already not well, was sitting at the window and directing me from above to say where was the right place to dig, to plant. And so, so this was a kind of a collaborative effort to plant that tree right there. And it's done so well. And I think I take care of it and it takes care of me. And every time, and I've hugged it and I talk to it, and it's just delightful.
So thank you. By the way, I should have mentioned this is about elderhood. So the people in the chat who I can watch a little bit who've been talking about a 3,000-year-old tree probably trump yours. I'm surprised, Lana, you must be older than I thought you were if you planted a tree that's now 30 feet high. But anyway, so this is about elderhood and it's about ancestorhood. I mentioned that I'd like to be buried under my tree, but the idea that trees that are passed on, trees dies very slowly, that in the dying tree log in the forest, there is also life. So, I mean, we can talk about aging and we can talk about ancestorhood, but I'm going to ask Alexandra to tell her story, please.
Okay, thank you very much. So I live in Mexico and I'm Mexican, and I just imagined a tree my parents have in their house. They still have it. They both still are alive. They're 80s, around their 80s. And it's a lemon tree. And you know, well, lemons in Mexico are really common, but it's a tree that I remember was there since I was 9 years old. For me, visiting that tree right now was, wow, it was really awesome because I wrote, well, in fact, I made like a drawing. Well, I don't know if you can see it. So it's like a lemon tree, and then there's many words like life cycle. So it's been there for like maybe 3 generations. With now they you know, the grandchildren of my parents, and it means a lot of strength, roots, and sharing, and spirituality, and love and connection. And at the end, as you were talking, I felt a lot of gratitude for this tree for taking care of my parents, because this tree is just outside the window of their bedroom. So this was my experience. Thank you very much.
Lovely stories. Rolla.
Well, like Ilana, the notion of going to a single tree was very difficult for me. I was flying around to redwood trees that I know, to red fir trees I know, and I became anxious having to choose. I've planted an orchard, and the trees there each has their own story. So I had to pull myself back to a Western hemlock in our yard that at one point I wanted to cut down. And now it's one of my favorite trees. So it's that interesting relationship over time that's developed with the tree and my deep love for it. So I think our relationships with a tree or trees become very complicated. I'm very poly when it comes to trees. I'm quite open to loving many of them, but I was able to manage to find my way into my Western hemlock, which was impacted by the heat dome last summer, where temperatures reached 120 degrees Fahrenheit here in Portland, and I was afraid it was going to die, and I was out deep watering it for weeks. So yeah, trees evoke that deep memory of place, and it's special.
So let me welcome a few other people, as I apologize to those that couldn't pick their favorite tree. I do hope when you got to your Western hemlock that the hemlock calmed you down and treated the anxiety that I created, Rolla. So Nellie, welcome. Nora, welcome. Sylvia, welcome. Sorry, I'm forgetting who's been here and who's not been here. What we're doing is sharing stories of what we have learned about health. And some of us who were here earlier paid a visit in our imagination to one or more favorite trees. Please feel free to join in. The theme here is what can we learn about health from trees and forests? And I'm a performance character. I play a tree doctor who asks that question of human beings. So I'm asking that of you all here to see what we can share and create a forest of ideas and connections around health and healing and trees and forests. So is anybody else wanting to share a story?
I can share, Peter.
I can, please.
So I couldn't pick a tree. The first tree was a drawing of a tree, and then trees lining the streets while driving by. And then when you said go into the tree, I had to go to the tree that shares the yard, right out my front door. And in the tree, just visualizing, it was a wonderful feeling of well-being, this communion and relationship and no separation, and just in that. So I think that relates to ancestors too. There is no separation. So thank you for that. It was nice to go inside the tree.
You might have noticed that you actually shared some DNA with that tree, depending on the species, 30 or 40%. So trees are our ancestors many, many years ago. And Sylvia, I do have to recognize that you have a tree in your official logo. So you must be deeply arboreal, as we say.
Hello. Yes. That's my psychotherapeutic logo. I'm from Mexico City, so sorry if I'm not fluent in English, but maybe if I can share a little bit of the ideas with this exercise, it's that I've been learning from trees that the importance of maybe I don't know what's the name of this equanimity. I don't know if that's the word in English.
Equanimity. Yes,
Yes, that's
if it's
right.
a cognate, yes, Raul is nodding his head, I think, in agreement.
Yes, equanimity. Because for me, they are kind of like resilient. Like many of them can resist the forces of nature, by like storms, like heavy snowing, for example. And for me, that's an example that I can be resilient, persistent, and for me, that's always a synonym of mental health, to know how to endure the adversities of life. So I want to be more like trees when huge storms and bad storms hit my ground or hit my my life.
Lovely. We're learning lots of lessons here. I want to offer a few thoughts about what I've learned from being a tree doctor in a minute, but let's hear from anybody else who would like to share a story.
I would like to, Peter. It's Deb.
Hi.
I'm currently and have now moved permanently back to my hometown province in Canada, British Columbia, and my partner and I were very deliberate in buying the property we have because there are so many trees on it. So I'm in my home office and looking out the window, I can see 3 aspens that I love. And there's fir trees and there's hawthorn trees, and trees have always been important to me. I can feel them when I walk, when I feel sort of emotionally disconnected in life. I go for a walk and I can feel the trees and they center me. So having that lovely exercise to start with was really easy for me because I feel very bonded to trees and always have. And I think they're just such a source of spiritual strength for me as well, that that was quite lovely. So thank you for that.
Well, those of you that really are in love with trees, you really do have to learn how to become a tree. I mean, that's my yin and yang embedded in an oak tree. That's my official tree doctor t-shirt. But Nellie, I'm dying to hear from where you are and what brings you here and what's your favorite tree that you've learned something from.
Thank you. I'm from Kenya. My name is Nellie Dirango, co-founder Kimo Wellness Foundation, a non-profit organization in Kenya. I'm a Taos Associate member from the year 2016, and I am proud to have joined the TIAC, the Taos Institute Council this year from October. Yes, thank you. Sorry for being a bit late. Technology was a problem for me. I had an issue with technology. That's why I've joined late. Since the weather here is not very good in Kenya, it's raining. Now, my great tree is the oak tree or the pig, and in my mother tongue, we call it the mugumo tree. The great oak tree for me is a symbol of life. It is a symbol of sacred, a sacred tree where my ancestors used to pray. Under this great tree, they would offer sacrifices, especially when there was lack of rain, when there was a calamity that was happening, they would slaughter a goat under that tree. And when I was imagining about this tree, I was imagining about the sacredness of health, that which is God-given, the nature of health that we have. You enjoy health, yet you don't know who provided this good health to you. So for me, I look at this tree as very unique, just as I look at my health as very unique. something that I cannot be able to explain. Much as I feed my body with the food that can be hygienic or the food nutritional value, the basis of how I am healthy, how the food is delivered in the body, that is still remains a mystery to all of us. So just like the oak tree, which has a mystery of life. I think this is the tree I would love to share about. Thank you.
Thank you for the extra effort to come to us and to raise the issue of the spirit, the religious aspects of trees. Frankly, in the West, we don't give enough gratitude to the idea that our health is so dependent on our spirit, and thank you for sharing that. And an oak tree. Yes, I'm Celtic, so I think of oak trees are just so splendid. This is an oak tree on my chest. Other people want to share a story, and I'm going to build on some of these stories and just share a few lessons in a minute. But who else would like to share a story of what they've learned from trees? And Nora already has a note from the doctor, me, because in an earlier session I learned she has laryngitis. So Nora is our official listener for this session, unless she wants to talk through her laryngitis. Anybody else?
I would like to go ahead if you don't mind. My connection is actually not a really huge, large tree, but yet my bonsai. It is a ceiba tree, which actually can grow to over 70 meters high. I live here in Central America, and as I travel around the country, I search out the ceibas because they're considered the sacred tree of life. But also at the same time, they are considered part of the Mayan cosmovision to be the pathway to the underworld. And I'm working at a school here for quite a long time, which goes by the name of a Maya school. And I've had the pleasure of planting a very small one of these ceiba trees, which also goes by the name of kapok, and watching it grow. It's really taking off in size, and we're all just waiting and watching as it starts to take over, because the roots can really take over and grow. And just that relationship with my ceiba, that is my little one, it's getting close to 100 years old. It's been passed on through a couple different families. So as it goes through its own cycles, we kind of have a relationship back and forth as it goes through its own dry time and its time when it comes alive with its own leaves. So a little bit different part of the world, as I come from northern part of North America. So it's a beautiful addition to life.
I love the idea of a human passing trees across generations. It's a family tree, isn't it? That's a little attempt at humor. So anybody else? Yeah, Raul, are you raising your hand?
Yep.
Yep.
It wasn't what I was thinking about, so it shows you were really paying attention to me. Let's get it started. First, I would like to say to Sylvia, girl, your English is fluent. Believe it. And quite good. But I don't know the name, even though I love trees and plants, as you can easily see by my background. I'm terrible to naming them, so I will try to describe it. The tree, I thought, it's like bigger than me, so it can cast a shadow on me when it's too hot. And when I think about tree, I think about stillness. But I have a concept of stillness where I thought not of a rigid tree like those millennial trees, but I thought some trees that their trunk is not too large, so it bounces, but it never breaks, you know. So that's my inspiration of stillness. I think rigidness is limiting. When I think in terms of flexibility and stillness, I think about this tree. Like, if you remember Harry Potter movie, there was one tree of that. It was a violent one. I was thinking about a specific one. Like, I think trees teach me a lot about patience and as Sylvia said, how face adversities, how endure before adversities. Those were some of my thoughts.
So thank you all. Obviously, there'll be time for more interaction, but let me just share why I became a tree doctor. So that happened in several different forests around the world, including my backyard, which is a place where I've planted several trees of different ages over the years, including the pine trees that my daughters now swing from. Of course, we can say, what can we learn from trees about from a biological perspective? Because, you know, this idea of the lungs of the planet. And I think we can easily find out what we can learn from trees in terms of metaphors. I use them, you use them, strength, illumination, rootedness, and so on. But what I became interested in was the relationship between human civilization and forests. Because there are books that are written that say that the history of our species is written in our relationships to forests. I mean, we can imagine Kenya, the origins of humanity, where we, about 400 million years ago, came out of the trees. We were arboreal creatures. And we cleared the forests, and we still are in Brazil and many other places, to become agriculturalists and create agricultural civilizations, which many would argue was the beginning of the problems of modernity, on our sense of control over nature. But just keep thinking about the other relationships we have with trees. The trees in England were cleared in many places to make masts for wooden ships. So the masts of wooden ships, trees and forests. Paper, how we tell our stories in written form. I won't elaborate, but I think you can get a sense of why a history could be written. There's a book called Trees or Forests, The Shadow of Civilizations. And in each of the forests, I became indigenous in the sense that each forest was associated with a lesson. So let me, in 1 minute, just tell you all those forests and the lessons. In the Muir Woods, the redwoods on California that I visited many times, where I photographed them, at one point I kind of started crying, and I decided I wasn't going to photograph them, I was going to become them. I was going to go move from photography to art of a performance nature. In Brazil, then the shamanistic aspects of trees. Can you imagine that there might be people still today in the Brazilian rainforest who have not seen civilization? It's possible. And those people knew trees in ways that we cannot even fathom. They could hear the rustling of leaves and know what species of monkey was going and how hungry they were by how they were moving through the trees. The shamanistic notion. And in Canada, I do a lot of intergenerational work. So the idea that trees tell us something about relationships and connections between generations came out of Canada. And finally, most amusingly, I suppose for me, I was a tree doctor chairing a session in a conference on transdisciplinarity, which is this notion that it's the boundaries of things that are important in Transylvania, meaning beyond the forest. So I actually went beyond the forest into what the Romanians claim is the most haunted forest in the world. So whether it's intergenerativity or transdisciplinarity or shamanism or art, I think you can just see in this brief moment that for me, I've learned things in relationship to these forests, which I believe are important concepts and practices to bring forward, because we've talked a lot about the past of our relationship to trees. If we believe that our relationship to trees is has been an important part of our civilization, then as we transform civilization, as we make modern, we challenge modernity, we challenge the economics and politics today, I think we have to see our inspiration from trees. And I don't know, Raul, if you're from Brazil, but obviously, yes, you are. Yes. So obviously, Brazil is a place that is important for everyone. And the politics of Brazil are important for everyone, because we also can't dissociate the future of civilization from our politics. So that's a little bit about the broader perspective from I call it broader perspective about what I've learned from being engaged with these forests around the world, and they all come to my backyard and my own forest. So that's just a few things from me. Back to you. And Raul, that's an invitation if you wish to, but anybody, Kenya, I mean, all these, Canada, I mean, what are the contemporary conversations between humans and forests? I think they're important.
You're welcome.
Don't know, I was thinking as you were speaking, like Brazil is a large country with much more than just one culture. Like it's at least 3 big cultures combined, like white, indigenous, and black. And indigenous and black culture, they still nowadays have a different relationship with nature. Like if you go to Umbanda, I don't know if you have ever heard of it, but it's an African religion that is still present in Brazil. It came with people who were removed from their land, but their culture still exists. And to them, their concept, like every time a person lose completely the contact with nature, it's like they lose the contact with themselves. And it explains a lot how, like in big cities, big metropolis, we feel much more isolated than we would do in a country city, because somehow it made us forget we are part of nature. And I also think and other cultural influences that make us think that our relationship with growing civilization development without thinking about sustainability. Like in Brazil, we try to have conversations that include indigenous people because they have been getting along with nature successfully for millenniums. So instead of these were some of my thoughts. I think if I continue, I will start to, yeah, I think it's a good time to stop and hear you.
I feel the profound nature of your stopping and creating space for other people. Ellie, did you want to say something about are trees still viewed with the respect?
Try, Norma. We try. It's still a huge conflict.
Yeah, sorry.
No, I was just answering Norma.
Oh, sorry. Yes, that was a response to the chat. So look in the chat too. We're having 2 conversations. No problem. So, Nelly, can you bring back to the conversation where the spirits of trees and where the spirits of your ancestors are in the modern state of Kenya?
Oh yes, in Kenya, around this time, I want to imagine about the spirits of our ancestors because I wrote a journal some time back. Let us sit down and reason together. That is, we sat at a tree, and when we tried to reconcile the people who are fighting, the different ethnic groups that we are fighting. I remember some times back under Taos, I was funded to do a program on peace building. And this peace building revolved around different communities that would not talk to one another. Therefore, because of the mistrust, none would want to go into the houses of others. But we sat at a great oak tree and we said, under that shade, like our friend Lau said, we sat under that great tree that provided shade, a shade that would bring reconciliation to a broken nation. And when we looked at ourselves, we were like, we are people of different ethnic origin, but we abided by the blood of one black community. And therefore, I was imagining and sharing with them, if you cut my heart here, what is going to wash from me is blood. And this blood, it is not different from the white blood. It is not different from the blood of the other person. And under the cover of that tree, we were able to say, let us sit down and reason together. So for me, according to our ancestors, the tree brought a cover of peace, hope, and unity amongst the members. Yes, the trees are still growing. And around this time, when it is raining, we are saying, if you cut one tree, you plant 3 trees. So it is time when we are having the green energy around this time. And we are thinking of a tree that brings back life, a tree that rejuvenates the air that we breathe. So I think we have great connections still with the trees. Thank you.
Wow. Akira Nirasawa, welcome. We're just sharing stories of what we've learned from relationships with trees, including profound stories just recently from Brazil and from Kenya. Are you able to participate? Can I ask you a question?
Thank you for your kindness, but I can't have English not so well.
Let me ask you a question for you to try, because for me, the Japanese cherry blossoms, you understand? They are a sign of peace from Japan to Washington, D.C.
And you say about cherry blossom sakura?
Yes, for the Japanese, they are a sign of, if I understand, the fading, the beauty passes quickly. That there's a moment of beauty, but they are beautiful, and then all of a sudden they are gone. You understand? Yes. Could you share some of the spirit of cherry trees in Japan?
Yeah. Yes, sakura, cherry blossom is a very important flower in Japan, maybe. We know sakura is going very well, but if the sakura cherry blossom is born, it's a very exciting space is there, and we make a circle and sometimes drinking, eating, and called enkai. Yeah, drinking group is many drinking group is in every city. Yeah, you can catch the meaning.
I assume you are drinking sake, not water.
Yes. It means alcohol, yes.
So that was beautiful. Thank you. I will say gozaimasu. Domo arigatou gozaimasu.
はい。こちらこそどうもありがとうございます。Thank you for listening.
So, what other stories? We have about 10 minutes. Of course, to a tree, that is nothing. But no, that's not right. To a tree, 10 minutes is very important, particularly if somebody is standing with a chainsaw in front of you. What other reflections do we have on what Akira said or Nellie said or anybody else? Let me
I
offer.
think the story of the tree is very exciting. Maybe I do not wish to dominate, but I'm getting some information about our Nobel of Peace, the late Wangari Maathai, who actually had to even was ready to be seen her nakedness in protest against people who would try to demolish forests. And even when he was going to be buried, he really refused. She really refused to be buried in a coffin. And she said she needed her body to be exhumed in the name of that she would not imagine anything to do with a tree that was going to be foreign in Kenya when a coffin is going to be made for her. The love for that nature and connection with the tree, may she rest in peace. Our Nobel of nature, the late Wangari Maathai. We have the trees around this time. We are blaming the drought in Kenya. There is a lot of hunger around this time. And the talk is revolving around, if we had not cut down trees, we would have plenty of rain. Many people have died. Cows have died around this time. Families are suffering. And everybody is talking about the tree, the tree, the tree. And they are getting back to history where our ancestors never used to lack food because there was plenty of rain. And if rain failed, they would go to pray to their gods under the great indigenous trees. And it is believed that by the end of the prayers, by the end of the sacrifices they made, they would be sent home by a lot of downpour of the rain and the waters. And from that day, they would start planting. They would start even collecting water in water reservoirs. So the story of the tree here, it is really attractive for me. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to tell one more tree story with a lesson for me, and it comes from Greece. We don't have anybody from Greece here. So I was there with a friend who's developing intergenerational communities in rural Greece. And we visited a 3,000-year-old olive tree. Impressive. But we also saw what human beings were doing to olive groves. They were growing the trees in lines, and they were no longer growing the olive trees alongside juniper trees and one other tree, maybe almond, because the traditional practices had told them that the diseases would stay away from the olive trees if you grew some other trees in the same area, but not in a line all by themselves. So this is the problem of cities and trees. This is the problem of tree business. We grow trees that in ways that are not natural for the trees. They are us imposing our will on trees to try to produce things we need. So for me, that lesson from Greece about how traditional ways, whether they are in Kenya or whether they are in Brazil, we need to listen to the ways we have been in relationship with trees and forests in healthier ways in the past. And so for me, the tree doctor character is, for me, finding my indigenous roots, for finding those lessons that we have forgotten. So there are a couple new people who've just appeared. I see Isabel is also from Brazil. It's a time, Akira, thank you for showing your photograph. It's good to see you. I'm looking at Giovanna, which is a bit unfair since we're coming close to the end, but I want to have all voices. Would you have do you have a comment about what you've learned from your favorite trees? And if not, that's fine. Well, so would anybody else like to offer some final thoughts about what they're going to take away from this session? I urge you, go visit your favorite tree if they're close by and say, there are other human beings around the planet that are trying to learn from you and their favorite trees.
I'm going to make one sentence with my voice now. Peter, when you said about the monoplanting, were you trying to say we also can learn about diversity and the importance of allowing for diversity, because it's only through that we have a healthy planet and healthy life?
I think absolutely. Nature tells us that ecosystems are healthier if we respect diversity and find the unity emerge from that diversity. If there is ever a time for us to think of human cultural diversity in the same way and see human differences as part of our a unifying force, then I think that's another example of how nature can tell us things about how we should be behaving as parts of nature, but admittedly a diverse part of nature.
Peter, and I would just add to Ilana's comment earlier that trees are home and shelter to so many other species, and how we look at them and study them. It used to be that illustrations, scientific illustrations, would never show just one tree or one plant. It would be everything around it, you know, all the beautiful insects and just everything. And it kind of casts the way we can view the world by just broadening that a bit.
And if I could make one more comment to respond to that, there is a dominant monoculture in this world, and we can call it by whatever name we want. I use the word neoliberalism. There are wealthy people who exist in every country and every political system who have used the value of money to dominate other cultures. So it's time for us to throw off the shackles of that dominant monoculture and release human imagination in a way that that we have had and we need to have again. Now the tree doctor is sounding like the tree preacher. Now I'm giving a sermon.
Hallelujah.
Well, I think we've got a couple more minutes, so let me just say that.
Hallelujah, amen.
What's that? Amen. Hallelujah. Actually, let's go out with a big tree-like hallelujah. Are we ready for that? Are we ready for that? This is not a religious statement. This is an embodied release of emotions. And look, Sylvia is getting ready for a big hallelujah. Oh my golly day. Okay, everybody ready for the hallelujah? And then I'll hit the button and we'll go on to listen to Ken Gergen, I guess. All right. 3 is when you do it. 1, 2, 3.
Hallelujah!
Bye-bye.
Grow well.
Bye.
Learn
Thank
well.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.